Welcome everyone to the 2025 Photonics Spectra Summit Series. Thank you so much for attending the Spectroscopy Summit, and in this session you are going to hear from Bjarke Rosa, the Vice President of Sales at Ipsen Photonics. Bjarke earned his doctorate in optics and joins us today to introduce the principles of Raman spectroscopy and help viewers design compact spectrometers. If you have any questions or comments, you can type them right into the Summit chat box that is on your screen. And if you missed part of today's sessions, you can always come back later and watch them on demand. That's all from me. Bjarke, thank you so much for taking the time to join us at the Spectroscopy Summit.
So thank you, Jake, for the kind introductions, and hello, everybody. My name is Bjarke Rosa, and I'm VP of Sales and Marketing at Ipsen Photonics. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss the challenges you'll face when choosing a Raman spectrometer for industrial use. And I'll also explain how to address those challenges in the spectrometer design. Here's the outline of today's talk. I'll start by a very brief introduction to Raman spectroscopy and how a Raman instrument is built. Then I'll go through the most common challenges that you are likely to encounter when applying Raman spectroscopy outside the lab. I'll then explain how to address those challenges, and at the end of the talk, I'll give a summary. Before we get started with the Raman spectrometer, let me just spend one slide explaining who we are at Ipsen Photonics. So we design and manufacture transmission gratings and OEM spectrometers for integration into instruments. Our gratings are transmission gratings etched into the surface of fused silica, which is a technology that enables us to manufacture broadband gratings with the world's highest diffraction efficiencies. Our focus is 100% OEM supply, and we have built strong long-term partnerships with our customers. Through our high-performance products and deep collaboration, we help our customers succeed with their businesses. But now, let's talk Raman. I'll not go into detail with how Raman works because that's a presentation in itself, but just highlight that the Raman effect is inelastic scattering of light with a certain vibrational mode of a molecule. As shown here, an incoming photon will result in some light scattered at the same wavelength as the photon. This is called Raman scattering and illustrated with the green waves. Now let me take this over again. I'll start over now. But now let's talk Raman. I'll not go into detail with how Raman works. That's a presentation in itself. But just highlight that the Raman effect is inelastic scattering of light with certain vibrational modes of a molecule. As shown here, an incoming photon will result in some light scattered in the same wavelength as a photon. This is called Rayleigh scattering. Some light is scattered at a longer wavelength, and this is called Stokes shifted scatter. And some light scattered at shorter wavelength. This is called anti-Stokes scatter. The Raman scattered wavelength is linked to the specific vibrational modes of the molecule and therefore unique for each type of molecular structure. As an example, this spectrum shows the Stokes shifted very distinct peak of cyclohexane. To record a Raman spectrum, you need a Raman spectroscopy instrument. This consists of basically four components: a laser, which is a monochromatic light source; optics to direct the laser light to the sample and to collect the scattered light and send it to the spectrometer. The setup also includes several optical filters to reduce the amount of ambient and direct scatter light that enters the fourth part, namely the spectrometer. Raman spectroscopy has for a long time been used in labs around the world. Often the instruments are large, rather expensive equipment that can be used to analyze almost any type of sample. Also, these delicate instruments are operated by a scientific staff that typically build their own models and calibrations to adapt the instrument to their specific project. Another characteristic of the lab is that it's temperature and humidity control. So it's a very controlled environment. When Raman spectrometers are used outside the lab, the situation changes completely. In industrial environments, the Raman spectrometers are typically used for a very specific application where a large amount of similar known types of samples are analyzed in a continuous stream. This requires many similar instruments that ideally should provide the same result, no matter which instrument a given sample is measured on. Two other big differences to the lab case are that the operators are non-scientific and the environment is uncontrolled, meaning that, for example, temperature and humidity may vary quite a lot. As mentioned, industrial setting normally only require the instrument to detect a limited set of samples. This slide gives two examples of such application. The first one is counterfeit drug detection, where the Raman spectrometer basically only need to detect whether the active ingredient is present at the right quantity in a pharmaceutical tablet. Also, in airport security, Raman can be used to screen for a range of explosive materials. In these cases, a general purpose instrument will be overkill and too expensive. Instead, it's beneficial to have a spectrometer designed that fits the exact needs for the specific applications. As mentioned earlier, industrial uses of Raman spectrometers require many identical instruments. First of all, this demand is crucial to ensure consistent measurements across multiple production lines and even factory sites in different locations. Along the same note, it must be possible to replicate production lines, including the measurement setups, and obtain the same performance as in the original setup. Since the operators are non-experts in Raman spectroscopy, it's naturally most efficient if they need to be trained in one type of instrument only. To reduce the amount of downtime in case of failures, it's important to be able to exchange Raman spectrometers without affecting the performance or having to go through extensive recalibrations. And finally, having similar instruments throughout a manufacturing plant helps to meet regulatory requirements. To summarize, industrial spectrometers should ideally be easy to operate, not need calibration, and operate with zero downtime. An extra challenge for the spectrometers used in the industry is the environment. In contrast to the case in the lab, the temperature in a factory can vary a lot due to seasonal variations or neighboring machinery heating or cooling. Also, a spectrometer might be mounted at or near a vibrating machine like a pump, or it could be handheld. And finally, the humidity can, just as the temperature, vary quite a lot in a factory. So how do we address all these challenges? In the next part, I'll discuss how the spectrometer can be designed for industrial use cases. Here's a high-level overview of which parts are in a spectrometer. The core component is a grating that separates the different wavelengths of the incoming Raman scattered light. The detector is an array of photodiodes called pixels that convert light intensity to electronic charge. The higher the charge at a given pixel, the stronger the light at the corresponding wavelength. The spectrometer also includes a slit and optics to collimate and refocus the light to the detector array. As mentioned earlier, it's the best option to design a spectrometer tailor-made to a given application. This means matching the wavelength range to the range required to cover the anticipated Raman spectra. Not more, not less. The resolution is also a key parameter that can affect the spectrometer design. The resolution should be designed to enable the closest two peaks of the spectrum to be resolved, but not more than that. While wavelength range and resolution are the primary parameters, there are many other parameters to consider. Often it's desirable to go for as compact a spectrometer as possible, as this will often reduce the cost and weight, enabling portable instruments and/or instruments that are easy to fit into place in the factory. Raman scattering is a very weak process, so the spectrometer should in general have very high sensitivity. For some applications, the signal to noise can also be critical, but for Raman, it's often sensitivity that is most important. So even though a spectrometer consists of several components, they cannot be chosen freely. In fact, the requirements from your application linked with the laws of physics often limit the design choices. Here we consider the detector, and the detector should have enough pixels to resolve the spectrum and the closest peaks in the spectrum. Normally, it's advisable to require 2.5 to 3 pixels to cover the resolution, which we here call delta lambda. On the other hand, we also need enough pixels to cover the entire wavelength range from the shortest wavelength to the longest wavelength. And not just any detector array can be used for advanced spectroscopy like Raman. In fact, the pixel size is often limited to between 7 and 50 microns, and your options will be further limited if you require a cooled detector. The wavelength range and resolution determines how many pixels you need, and let's have a look at an example for that. So say we need to cover a wavelength range from 800 to 1100 nanometer and need a resolution of 0.5 nanometer. So this could very well be for a 785 nanometer Raman system. The detector we want to work with has a pixel width of 14 microns. If we require the 0.5 nanometer resolution to cover 2.5 pixels, we need 5 pixels for each nanometer. To uncover the entire 800 to 1100 nanometer range, that means we'd need 1500 pixels. And with a 14 micron pixel spacing, we end up with a minimum length of the detector of 21 millimeter. So that sets largely the size requirements. So the slit and optics are to some extent also locked by the wavelength range and resolution requirements. In a spectrometer, the optics is in fact creating an image of the slit onto the detector, as shown here. If we change the optics, we can change the magnification in the system and thereby magnify or demagnify the slit image on the detector. But as mentioned earlier, we want the slit image to cover around 2.5 to 3 pixels. So the slit width clearly determines the resolution, but it's generally impractical just to reduce the slit width to get higher resolutions, because you also get much less light through, and anything less than 5 micron is really difficult to manufacture. If we change the magnification, it also influences the numerical aperture, which determines how much light the spectrometer can collect. So it's seldom a good idea to work with very large magnification, so normally it's going to be around 1. So that's a preferred magnification. So from this discussion, the slit width is also to some extent locked by the requirements for resolution. So this means that in an entire spectrometer design, the only parameters we can really play with are the grating and the focal length of the optics. The focal length of the focusing length, here called LF, is determined by the length of the detector array LD, the grating groove density G, the wavelength range from maximum to minimum, and the diffraction angle beta as given by the formula here. As we discussed in the previous slides, the detector length and wavelength range are given by your application, so the only parameter we can work with is the grating groove density. In general, we want the device to be as compact as possible, meaning the focal length should be short. So we want a grating with a high groove density G and high as possible. At the same time, we of course also want the grating to provide a high efficiency so that we don't lose too many of the precious Raman scattered photons. So this graph shows examples of 3 different types of very common diffraction gratings used for Raman spectroscopy. In this case, we've illustrated for 785 nanometer spectrometers. The best option is clearly the fused silica transmission grating, shown by the blue line up here, has the highest efficiency, broadest wavelength range. And the reason for that is that there's a strong index contrast in this type of grating. The index contrast is basically between air and glass. And the grating you see here is obtained for a grating with a groove density of 1500 lines per millimeter. A volume phase grating, as the yellow one, is also a popular grating for Raman. This type of grating also provides a high peak efficiency, but within a narrow wavelength range, so it falls off here at the longer wavelength ranges. And typically, it also has a lower group density. The main reason for this is that the volume phase grating have lower index contracts in the grating, typically around 0.1 or less. Finally, blazed reflection gratings are probably the most commonly type of grating used in spectroscopy. However, as the gray line in the graph clearly shows, these gratings are not very well suited for high group density application because the efficiency is low, sits down here. What is not shown in the graph is that blazed reflection gratings with high group density also result in large polarization sensitivity, which can lead to instabilities if the polarization is not very well controlled in your application. Now let's look at how we can ensure that our spectrometers have consistent performance from unit to unit. This all starts at the design stage, where the various tolerances on the component should be taken into consideration by performing a comprehensive tolerance analysis. All these parts will, of course, have some variability from component to component and from batch to batch. If the spectrometer design is done well, the performance of the spectrometer will stay within reasonable limits, but if the design is done bad, the performance can vary a lot from unit to unit. In case of tolerances that are hard to compensate in the design directly, it can be a solution to build in a few compensators. This could be a simple mechanical adjustment of the distance between, say, the detector and the last lens in order to compensate for variation in focal length and thereby adjust for best focus and optimum resolution. To reduce the downtime of these instruments in daily use, we want the spectrometer to be calibration free. The calibration basically gives the relation between a pixel position and a wavelength on the detector. This calibration is done at the factory at the time when the spectrometer is being manufactured. If the parts inside the spectrometer shift position over time, there is a risk that the spectrum permanently changes position in the detector and therefore needs to be recalibrated. So to avoid this, we need to design the spectrometer such that the internal parts remain at their original position on the various external influences like changing temperatures, mechanical shocks, etc. In general, moving parts are a no-go because they will wear over time and unavoidably need recalibration or even replacement. Also, it's possible to use materials with lower thermal expansion or use materials in a smart way where differences in thermal expansion balances out. A little bit along the same line, we also don't want the spectrometer performance, such as resolution, to change during operation, even if the spectrometer and the change is deterministic, and the spectrometer comes back to the original performance. The way to avoid this is by avoiding moving parts, designing the spectrometer to be athermal, and also to design mounting methods of components like the grating and optics to be insensitive to shock and vibrations. Before I sum up, I just want to highlight that even though this presentation have had its focus on Raman, the same principles apply for other types of spectrometers that require high resolution and high efficiency. This could, for instance, be optical coherence tomography and laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, just to give you a few examples. So to summarize my presentation about using Raman spectroscopy beyond the lab, the key message is that there are a lot of very different requirements to the spectrometer when it should be used in an industrial environment compared to when the spectrometer is used in the lab. These requirements should be addressed by designing spectrometers tailor-made for the specific application. And this means making sure the spectrometer fits the exact wavelength range, matches resolution, size requirements, sensitivity, and noise requirements, all set by the application. Applying a spectrometer designed for scientific use in a lab is almost always overkill. I pointed out that the diffraction grating is a key component in the design because many of the other components are more or less given by the application. When choosing a diffraction grating, high efficiency and high groove density is important for Raman spectroscopy. And finally, in an industrial environment, it's necessary that the spectrometer is designed to be robust against long-term and short-term external influences like temperature changes, shock, and vibration. Thank you for your attention and for watching my presentation.
Thank you so much, Bjarke, for joining us to teach viewers how to develop consistent performance of Raman spectrometers. Before we wrap up here, I just want to remind everyone in the audience, if you haven't already, you can type your questions and comments into the Summit chat box, and do not worry, if you have not been answered yet, you will be reached via email at a later date. This session is hosted by us at Photonics Media, and we certainly hope you're enjoying the Spectroscopy Summit. Thank you all so much for joining us.